So I did some digging on you, and I came across a famous ad that you were part of as a child growing
Oh my God! Are you crazy? So I've always had a challenge, particularly when I was starting as an entrepreneur. I always used to question, do I want to do this because I want to do this or because other companies do this?
I'm fascinated by that.
So that ability to be laser focused on not following what everyone else is doing, but trying to do things that make sense to you is a great quality that has really helped me to stay focused when I'm going through some challenging times in the business.
Did somebody in the boardroom just say, guys, this is not how marketing is done? Just, dial it back a little bit, take it easy, this is food. Or what was that like?
If you don't have a budget as big as your competitor, how are you going to stand out then in the market? So there are a number of factors, but I think in my view, there were three key factors that I think were the magic. Mm-hmm. The one was
Hello, Resonate community, and welcome to the best and the biggest sales and entrepreneurship podcast in the whole wide world. Thank you. You see, I've got a creative in the house. So there's like so much collaboration. Sylvester Chauke.
Hi.
It is a dream having you on my podcast. Thank you for coming.
Such an honor. I'm happy to be here.
I had this whole intro because I'm trying to tell people who I got. I'm just like, oh my God. Guys, today we have Sylvester Chauke. He's the founder of a DNA brand architects. You guys have definitely seen them. By the way, like your offices are so pretty.
Oh, thank you.
I've seen them from the outside and I thought, very nice.
Come visit.
I definitely will. As the former director of marketing at MTV Networks Africa, a multi-award winning entrepreneur, and a proud champion of African excellence. I love this so much. Welcome to the Resonate podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Okay, so we kickstart the podcast with a fire round of questions. We want to get to know you a little bit more. We want to get to know Sylvester. What's the thought process behind the genius? Okay, so my first question to you is, if creativity were a person and walked into a room, okay, what would they be wearing and what's the first thing they'll say?
They would be wearing an item that would create a conversation.
Okay.
Definitely. Because creatives would want to have an engagement point. Mm-hmm. So if it's what a beautiful blouse, or those are nice jeans, or those are nice shades, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So they'll be wearing something that is special in that way.
Yeah.
And what they will say is, "Hi, I'm here."
Yeah. Nice. Like, do you not see me?
Hello.
I love that. Okay, cool. And then my second question is, let's say you're hosting a dinner, with the world's most iconic brands as guests. Who's getting a seat at Sylvester's table?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, my goodness. Apple. Would be on there. Absolutely amazing brand. Not so much just about the technology and what they've been able to deliver, but just the way they work, the way they do things, and also the way that they touch people's lives around the world. Absolutely, they will be right there.
Yeah.
Google will be one.
Okay.
I think they'll be interesting.
I see that,
because you want to also have a look at a creative, but also look at someone who has got a lot of knowledge and insight.
Yeah.
And I think that would be absolutely amazing.
Okay.
And then I'd have like a fun brand. I think I actually love art. So I'd have Zeiss Mocha, which is the Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art down in Cape Town. Would be an amazing brand, but also an amazing institution that talks to the power of art on the continent. How many people do I have to have?
As much as
oh well, then maybe let's just continue because
those three. That is so interesting. Why Apple? Is it more like the design, simplicity, longevity?
Not so much just that, but think the focus on what they intend to do in the world. The relentless focus and simplicity of not looking at what everybody's doing, but almost charting their own path every time.
I love that.
And I have had the privilege of having them as a client. So I also understand so much why they are such a successful business, because no matter what happens around the competition and what other brands are doing, they're like, no, we do what we do, and we are very happy and comfortable with that. And that's such an amazing thing, where many brands and many people sort of just want to do what everybody else is doing at a particular time. So I love that focus and that individualistic approach to who they are, and they will never back down from it.
That's interesting. And I think as you say that, I keep thinking to myself, as an entrepreneur, you obviously still want to keep focus, but at the same time, you want to get with the trends, and you want to kind of, it's that agility. And would you say that they've kind of mastered?
I think they're definitely a masterclass on focus, on the intention of what they want to bring to the world. And in fact, I love that you're linking this to entrepreneurship, because I've always had a challenge, particularly when I was starting as an entrepreneur. I always used to question, do I want to do this because I want to do this, or because other companies do this?
Ooh.
Do I want to introduce this new program in my office because other companies do it, or do I want to do it because I think it's the right thing for us to do? So I've always had a challenge of managing industry norms, what other businesses do, and in trying to make sure that, from my perspective in my business, we want to do things that make sense for us, not because they are a category norm. And that was quite important for us, because entrepreneurs need to listen in, for sure. And I've had to spend a lot of time on, but is this what I want? But is this what I want my people to feel? Is this how I want the company to be run? And sometimes you find that the norm is to do what everybody else is doing, and it doesn't work in your company, or it's not really effective for what you want to build. So that ability to be laser focused on not following what everyone else is doing, but trying to do things that make sense to you, is a great quality that has really helped me to stay focused when I'm going through some challenging times in the business.
You started with the masterclass already. I'm like taking notes mentally. Okay. My third question to you, and I think this is going to lead so well into what I want to ask you going forward, is that if somebody tried to steal your branding playbook, what's the one rule or principle they'd totally mess up without you?
One. I have two, but
okay, give me two.
Okay,
I want all of them.
The one would be clarity.
Okay.
I think, you can copy, anybody can copy what everyone else is doing quite easily. They just need to have access to that or the money. But sometimes the clarity to discern what is you and what is not is something that you can't copy, because, it's not just available. I think that's one of them, which is quite important. The second one is just authenticity, but doing things in your own way, your own je ne sais quoi, your style, the way you show up in your own sort of unique way is something that you also can't necessarily just copy. And I think there's a way in which you deliver something. There's a way that someone else delivers the same thing. And I think for me, if they don't have those two things, they will struggle.
Yeah, it's like you can steal the playbook, but if you don't have Sylvester, it will show. Which is very interesting. So I did some digging on you, and I came across a famous ad that you were part of as a child growing up.
Oh my God! Are you crazy?
And just through following you over the years, I have also kind of learned that it's part of the things that made Sylvester the person that he is right now. What about that ad sparked your interest in just the creative field?
I think three things. One, I lived in Soweto, and I took a taxi to go to the shoot or on set of this ad. And when I got there, I was introduced to the world of advertising. I hadn't seen it. I think I've always just seen ads on television, but for the first time, I got to see them being created, or at least this one ad being created. And then 2 weeks later, I saw it on TV, and I thought, oh, this is what they do. And so it sparked an interest. One. Two, walking into a set and you see so many people working, this is their daily job, and they are in the world of creativity and sort of solving problems creatively, was fascinating for me, because I thought, oh, that could be interesting as a job. Because up to that point, you always want to do jobs that you see and that you see other people portray on television or family or community. And this was an experience for me that made me realize that there are people doing interesting other kind of interesting jobs out there outside of what I think. So it opened my world to this new career path and a new opportunity.
Yeah.
And then lastly, it was just the sheer genius of being part of an production of a TV commercial and then seeing it at home with my family was like the most jarring thing, because I thought, oh my God, so these things are actually being created, and there are people who create these things, and we sit at home and we sort of absorb them and we learn from them, and then we use it. And of course, the ad was selling a product, so there are people that are in charge of doing that.
Yeah.
So that was fascinating for me. I think it opened my world. It made my world bigger than what it was. And it also gave me an introduction to a potential career for me.
That exposure part was very important.
Huge.
That was very, very big. I mean, I can definitely see that, and also just kind of relate to having gone to spaces and just being shocked at like, oh, is this what happens when this happens? And then initially you just get that desire of like, oh, this is something I'd be interested in. I would love to take part in it, to pursue. And as you grow, it actually starts growing, because now you start pursuing it mentally and with all the other resources coming to play.
And to be honest, if you think about it, as a Black child, right? We grew up in the township, and then you get into a taxi, and maybe you go to Bree or Nord, and then you connect to go to, let's say, Rosebank or Sandton, right? Yeah. You're always exposed to such different worlds on a daily basis, or how, when you get to see that. And I know many of us used to get into a taxi and we'll of course drive around. And I used to do that, go to Randburg for dance classes, for example, and I'd be seeing these homes that you just think, wow, people live in these homes. Isn't that amazing? Or when I get into my dance class, the studio is like in a house, and these kids, I mean, it's just like insane. And then you go to a mall and you walk around and you just think, oh, wow, look at this. There's access for this. There's games. There's all of this stuff. I remember even going to the library down the road, in Joburg, right here, and I was completely amazed by just this mammoth library with like thousands or rather millions of books, but something that you don't get to see or experience. So this exposure part, I'm glad you're talking about it, because it's always gotten me quite interested in always being open and be willing to be exposed to new and interesting experiences, especially as an entrepreneur. You can't close your world. You have to keep opening it and trying new things all the time, because that's where you learn and grow so much.
I know you've got such and on this exposure part, you've got a reputation of hiring a lot of young people in your company. Is that part of the reason why?
Initially, it was Initially, when the company started, it was really more around what I could afford, right? Because, we're starting a business, and therefore I couldn't go and hire the head honchos of different agencies at the time. But also, I think I was young as well. So we needed people that were like-minded in terms of life stage where we were, and then being able to utilize that to build. And young people are hungry. And if you find good young people, they're going to keep you on your toes. They're going to find a quick way of finding a solution, because obviously they don't want to spend too much time doing the same thing. And they're almost almost always ready to learn, and they're not shy and, afraid of exploring new things and new ideas. So even now, I mean, even though 13 years in, we've got such a mix. We've got, yes, young people, but we also have matured, well-seasoned professionals in the industry. But we always want to make sure that there's always a nice balance between young and old. And in fact, Robbie Brosen, the founder of Nandos, used to say to me, it's about the wisdom of the old and the energy of the young.
Oh, I like that.
And if that could, if you utilize that, wisdom and youth, you could go far. And I've always appreciated that sentiment.
That is such also a big testament to your story, because just looking into your history, you've worked at all of these amazing companies as a young person and have given them so many values. I mean, I've heard several amazing stories about Draft FCB and like the interns there and moving forward. What do you think are the key things that you learned in all of those jobs and those positions that you had at the time that have influenced greatly how you lead now and how you've built your business?
I don't think that I would be here today without all of those places that I went to work at. And I have to tell you, FCB was an amazing foundation for me because it really almost gave me a sense of what this job of brand building of advertising is. And I think without that, I probably wouldn't be even anywhere close to what I'm doing right now. So FCB gave me an amazing foundation. Ogilvy made me fall in love with creativity even more because creativity is the lifeblood of that organization, and it continues to do so in the way that they create solutions for brands. Ogilvy was amazing for that. And I went to work at DDB. DDB chiseled me to shape. They made me love solving problems for brands where I never thought that would be a thing that excites me. Is if there's a problem, I have an opportunity to give a solution. Wow. Now I can do something about that. I mean, DDB was phenomenal in that way. And I learned so much from that. Nandos was just all about, if you want to create work that is going to be talked about, you have to ensure that it is highly creative and energizing to a country. And so Nandos really, really shaped me in how I solution. But also I think there was a nice almost marriage of how I like to do things and how they do things. So it was beautiful because it was very natural for me to work in that environment. And then I went to work at MTV. That made me realize that the continent of Africa, and us particularly as South Africans, we don't take the opportunity very seriously. We don't understand just how important our continent is and how working together within the continent is such an amazing gift. And so Alex Okosi, who was my boss there, just made me fall in love with Africa, not just what I do here in South Africa. And I was able to explore this continent widely, but also get to see the opportunity that lives there. So you can see that every place I've worked has really helped me and shaped me. But over and above that, I walked away with a little bit of something into my backpack that now I just use as a reference point for delivering at DNA. So there are two ways I utilize my experience. One is I go, wow, what are the things that I loved about those places that I worked? And then I take those into my backpack. Then I look at what are the things I hated about my, those places that I worked. And then I always say the things that I didn't like, let me not repeat them here at DNA. And let's try to make sure that we utilize and find our way of being able to kind of build that. So they've helped me to kind of shape my approach in terms of how I work, to a detail of how I want to show up, but also to what impact I want to leave in the world.
That is so beautiful. And I want to delve back to Nandos because I think it's the first food company that we saw be so daring in their ads and in the way that they communicate. And I don't think anybody has ever mastered just what Nandos does when it comes to their marketing. What was the idea there of like bringing a food company but creating ads or its advertising efforts and make it so real and also so connected to the average South African language, to the heart of the people? I'm fascinated by that. And I'm curious to hear what was just a glimpse of the thought process behind that. Did somebody in the boardroom just say, guys, this is not how marketing is done? Just, dial it back a little bit, take it easy, this is food? Or what was that like?
So there are a number of factors, but I think in my view, there were three key factors that I think were the magic. The one was the founders, Robbie Brosen, as one of the founders, and the team of Nando's founders who just wanted to do things very differently. So the space in which you create that allows for creativity to kind of happen is also determined by the people that run the business.
Of course.
So if you're not allowed to do anything like that, because there are businesses that will say, don't do that because that's not how we show up. But they were very open. So I think the founders and the leadership of Nando's are the source because they allow for certain things to happen.
Oh, nice.
That's number one. The second thing was actually budget constraints.
Wow.
Because if you don't have a budget as big as your competitor, how are you going to stand out then in the market? because you don't have as much money. So you then have to be highly creative to be able to stand out. So Nandos is very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
So that sort of entrepreneurial spirit really permeated across the marketing and all the boardrooms, because you could feel it in the business completely. And lastly, it's really about the partners that Nandos brought on board to help to build the brand. So TBWA was the initial agency that started working, and that really set the tone, I believe, for how Nandos was going to be relevant in the market. The creative that they put forward allowed for that to happen. And over the years, they were able to pass on the baton to all the other different agencies that worked on Nandos to continue that legacy. So I think TBWA really set the foundation, and John Hunt and the team there, with the founders, said, if we want to stand for something amazing, we then have to also do things in a way that is amazing. So I think those three things, in my view, were the secret sauce, the ingredients that continues to make Nandos what it is today.
I'm even further intrigued because, I can imagine you're surrounded by so many creatives at DNA. Like, I'd even go as far as saying most of your personnel at the office are creatives.
Yes.
So, and you spoke about creative freedom, right? It's like just giving to say, just do what you can. Let's see you explore. But I can also imagine as a business owner, you want to, is there ever, and I think for you, is there ever a need to keep it to a certain, where do we draw the line? Like, okay, you can, or is there even a line? You can be creative, but how do we still do it in a way that still communicates the client's values and what the clients want from us without going overboard? Or maybe my first question is, have you ever seen something that was like too creative? It was like, no one's understanding this. This is too complicated. I see what you're doing from a creative point of view, but it's not translating to the consumer. And how do you then manage that?
I think that the idea of trying to control creativity is probably a really complicated sort of conversation, right? Because at the end of the day, creativity is there to solve a problem, right? If there's a brand or a customer, a client that says we want to sell X amount of product, or we want to drive the reputation of our brand in this way, etc. So the creativity must be there to serve a goal. So it must always be solving, to it. Do I ever experience work that I just think this is not going to happen? I think we experience this every day, if I'm honest with you, because every time, by the time you're seeing the ad or the piece of work, there has been a number of reviews, conversations, boardroom conversations that make us and allow us to chisel this idea to shape. And in those conversations, we go, oh, that's not going to work because of 1, 2, 3. Or in order for it to work, it must be better in this way. And then we also have a collaboration job to be done, right? Because there's also a client who also has their own expectations and beliefs and of course now it's about this dance that we, at the end of the day, try to make sure that we chisel this piece of content or work to ensure that it's going to answer to the big job, which is the objective at hand. So I do think that the job of creativity is also like a collaborative job that requires a negotiation and an engagement, because you never ever really say, this is the ad, and then everybody says, yes, let's go. There's a lot of engagement and a lot of fighting and back and forth to get the work to be better.
So how do you translate, because I think what you just said is so powerful, how do we translate it to like social media influencers? Because I think it's also a different ball game if, for instance, I am creating the content. It's so personal to me. This is my creative idea. And then I send it to you and you say it sucks. Or like, it doesn't suck, but it's not good. And now I have to redo the whole thing. How do we translate what you just shared, which is the structure that is within the boardrooms and the big businesses, into people's small teams of creating content for a client?
I think that's such an amazing question, because it also talks to the fact that influencers and content creators, at some level, they become who they are because we love what they do in the way that they do it, right? And I've seen it on TikTok and everywhere else where someone is an amazing content creator and we tune in and we love that. And then you see a shift. Maybe now they're working with a bank and all of a sudden their content, you can see that this content is paid for one, but it's also adjusted so much so that it fits the product or the brand that the content creator is supporting. My view on this is that it's so critical that this collaboration between content creators and brands must be improved. And by that, I mean, we need to be looking at content creators not just as people that are going to create your content, but you actually are more collaborators with them to create content for you that they love to do. It's a shift in mindset. The problem with brands is that they say, this is my product. I need you to do it like this, but also bring your take to it. It's a bit late, I think, because you're now forcing me to answer to your brief and you're directing me to do it in your way, but also you want me to bring myself in. But it should be, hey, this is the product. How do you think we should do it based on your way of doing things? So it is always a collaboration. And I'm really encouraged because the space of influencers today is also saying to brands, you need to treat us with a little bit more respect, and you need to understand that as a channel and as a platform, it can be successful, but only if it's also nurtured with a level of freedom and autonomy to be able to create great content.
Yeah. And that's very interesting. Do you think that maybe from a big brand's perspective, there's a misunderstanding of numbers, engagement, and their correct audience? That maybe they're going to a certain person only because of the numbers, but not because of the ROI or the sales. So therefore, that's why they need this person to fit into what they imagine their brand wants to look like, because then they want that to fit into. But I think a lot about this because, I mean, we sit at like different meetings and influencer events, and these are conversations that are moving around the table. That there is obviously a growth happening within the influencer economy in South Africa, but is corporate South Africa catching up with that?
Corporate South Africa is not catching up fast enough, if I'm honest, because we're still a little bit behind with how we can amplify the influencers' potential in their world. And I mean, I was looking just last week, White Lotus, they did this amazing launch. And we're looking at it and thinking, geez, I mean, will this happen in South Africa? Let's think about it for a second. Probably not. Because in South Africa, they'll say, oh no, it costs too much money. Oh no, too much freedom for the influencers. And because there's a big challenge of brands thinking, we are paying for it and therefore we can influence then how it comes across, to the detriment of the audience of the influencer. Because now people get a bit surprised by, why are you doing this partnership? Because it doesn't seem to be authentic, or you don't even look like you're having a good time with it. As an example. So I do think that we are lagging behind, and I think the sooner we understand the power and the amplification of that, the better. Because right now you are seeing that influencers are almost in South Africa, we're almost starting to not believe them anymore. Right? Because it's this brand today, is another brand tomorrow. And that's because brands are also not really building long-term relationships with the influencers. I work with Telkom at the moment, and we have a relationship with influencers that are, a minimum of 12 months, 24 months. We do 3 years because we want to build a relationship with these influencers. It's not just a job for now, and then you get paid that amount, and then you move on to the next job, etc. Then you can't build, from that. And then as a result, you don't know the brand as intimately, and we don't know you as a creator as intimately. So I think that the trend of more long-term partnerships and commitment from brands to influencers would create much better work and much better and effective communication out there.
Oh, what you're saying is so powerful, because I think it speaks to how business is done in the real world. It's like we get clients and they sign us on for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year to give us the time to actually be creative enough and do the work over a long period until our efforts are eventually, selling to the people. Because if you can just do the work today and they say, well, you didn't bring in sales, it's like, yeah, but it was my first time. I needed to warm up my audience to this brand and. But for them, it's like the ROI is too quick.
True. It also has a lot to do with the level of sophistication of the marketers.
Ooh,
because some marketers just, unfortunately, then they don't have enough experience to know. So they do panic on how many views, they just think about how many views, how many likes.
Yeah.
They're not,
sure.
They're just short term in the way that they approach brand building. But brand building, as we all know, it's not about a short term gig, but there's also an important long term approach to it.
Yeah.
And when you do things with a long term approach, you actually get to build a much stronger brand rather than when you do things that are short term in mind. And I think that, honestly, and this is my view and my way of working, is just being able to make sure that there is I want to say a friendship, because and a collaboration that is based on, I want you as an influencer to grow, because your growth means our brand is also going to grow with you. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So there's also that balancing act of, I need you to benefit from this partnership, not just from a monetary perspective, but from just how we want to see you do the things that you are dreaming of doing at the moment. So if brands could offer influencers that opportunity to say, how do we elevate your brand? How do we work with you to take you to the next level? In fact, what are your dreams as an influencer, and how can we help you as a brand?
On the other side of that, right, is the uproar of, this brand is constantly using the same influencers all the time. And maybe they're trying to build relationships with them. And people are just being, the industry is not open because this X brand keeps using the same person over 2 years. Why aren't they trying, new people? And I think as somebody who's, deep into that industry, where's the balance then?
I think the balance should be really based on the objective of the brand, and what the job at hand is. Because both ways, do you want to be seen as a brand that's always there's always a new face every month, every week, everything, over time? Yeah. People are not going to believe anything that you are saying. Or sometimes there's also that element of we believe this influencer because they've been working with this person for a long time. They don't work with other competing brands. They're very invested in it and they know the product incredibly well. Yeah. You will know when an influencer is being effective with the brand when it almost feels like they're the brand or they're the spokesperson of the company, right? We work with influencers where you think, geez, you know this brand well, wow, because it's been built over time. Yeah. Anything that is about sort of quick fix, microwave success, in this sector currently, I don't believe is sustainable because we are already over it and consumers are already yawning.
True, and they can tell when something is fake and something is not doing well. What's your favorite creative piece? Like, what's the one thing that you worked on and that you're just like, till the day I die, that's going to be my headline?
I think I have so many in options of some work that I'm proud of. But I think the one that made me, that shifted my perspective around the job I do was definitely when I was at Nandos working on, I worked on a campaign for the elections. And so we took a Mickey on Julius Malema and the ANC Youth League. And it was a very sort of risky, sort of tricky kind of piece of communication. And it went out and immediately it created such havoc in the media space to a point that I was called into the Luthuli House by the Secretary General of the ANC to explain myself. And it was the most amazing experience because I realized just the power of communication and what it can do. So done right, it can absolutely create that conversation that needs to be created in a country, in a community, etc. So I realized that, wow, this thing is powerful. Not that I didn't know, but I think Nandos sort of trained me to understand that even more. Just to say that maybe saying something that other people are thinking about on their behalf is probably the best way of connecting and building, that bridge. So I would say that piece of work was an awakening for me because it reminded me of the power that this industry has in changing how people think about things and how they engage, with things. So since then, every piece of work, I've always had this thought, what is it there to do, or what is it serving, over and above selling, products and services. There's also an element of it can help to unite, encourage, inspire people. And in our country right now, we are in desperate need of more of that inspiration, positive news, elevating us as a community.
Yeah, sure. I'm hearing, I think when you say that, what stands out for me the most is intentionality. When you say, like, what is this piece actually meant to do? And there's so many things it can do. And I think of a lot of business owners in South Africa, whether small, medium, and high, we are sometimes caught up with the politics of the stomach. It's like, I want to build a brand, but I need the revenue to come in. I need money to come in. And sometimes that intentionality gets lost. How did you stay put when you started DNA, and as you begin to grow it? How did you stay put to like that intentionality of what you were trying to do and what you continuously still want to do in the creative landscape without changing directions? Because that could have been a moment of like, I'm going to be risky all the way, and even change the trajectory of how you would create, but not even on a positive way, but could be on the other side of things. But how did you stay put to that intention in the highs and the lows of business in general?
I think a lot of entrepreneurs do battle with that. So we kind of go where the money is. Yes. And some people say, I follow the money, right? They go, oh, there's a new thing, a new trend, let's go do that. And I think for me, one thing that has helped me tremendously is just being connected to not only the reason of why I actually wanted to start DNA, but it was also about the long-term growth that's coming. So I kind of never took for granted the fact that where I am now, can you imagine if it's stuck? Can you imagine what I can do in the next 5 years? Not even just what I've achieved. And that also sometimes has a sort of like an interesting sort of converse effect too, where we then don't celebrate enough of what we've achieved, and then we just move on to the next because we are so used to just moving to what's going on or what's about to happen. And I think that for me, the selfishness of an entrepreneur to be able to say, but is this what I want to do? Is this what I dreamt of doing? And is this what I should be doing? The constant questioning of yourself, regardless of how long you've been in business, is a healthy reminder so that you never just sway off from being interested about other things. Because, money is a big challenge. Because revenue is important, but it's not the only thing, right? Margin is important, but it's not just about the margin. There's also going to be the element of longevity that is required, but that's not going to just be based on the money that you are making, but it's also about the culture that you're building, the impact that you're building. And I've learned there are some years where I have not made enough money, but I have made so much impact.
Oh, wow.
There are some years where, I've made so much money, but I have not made so much impact. It just depends. And an entrepreneur should be sober to know that you are building for the next 50 years. You're not building for now. And yes, sometimes you need to be a little bit special in your mind and believe what you're saying, because if you don't, you will be swayed into shifting and moving based on what everybody else is doing. And I think that's always been a challenge. And I must tell you, I don't think I've mastered that yet.
Wow.
I still have to go, oh yeah, we don't want to be like that. No, let's not do that. That's not us. Or I've had to even just say, team, that's what I'm thinking. What do you think? Do you think I'm being clear at this point? Does it make sense? Am I being funny? I ask my mentors, I ask my loved ones, just sense check. Is it still what it is, or is it shifting? Is it changing? And that's important to me.
I'm learning so much from that, because what you're essentially saying is it's a conversation you constantly need to be having with yourself, and you must be open to have. Because I'd imagine you could be like, I've been in business for over a decade. I know what I'm doing.
Good luck.
Yeah, like the day I asked my team, like I have built this empire. And because it's so easy for entrepreneurs to be prideful, right? Because we can look at all the accolades and the interviews and all of these awards and think, of course, it's me. I'm the genius. And then you actually forget that, wait a minute, there's a team that forms.
It never is you. And in fact, I mean, yes, there are moments where every entrepreneur should be able to stop and pat themselves on the back for me, even simple things like month end, we're done, payroll is ticked, everything is being delivered. Basic things are still things that we take very, very we don't take for granted, but we take them with so much pride and joy, so that you never ever just underestimate that this is such an easy thing to do, because it's not an easy thing to do. You celebrate when you pay your team bonuses, and it's a big thing, and you celebrate, you go, well done, we've done it. You win a client, well done, we've done it. And you continue to build these relationships. I think entrepreneurs, the minute we get too comfortable and too cocky, that's when I believe the downfall starts happening, because we never then see the blind spots, because we don't ask the question. We think we know it all, and we're not really prepared to listen in, because we now feel like we've got the formula for how things will need to be to be built. And that also is a reason why I admire businesses that have been around for 100 years. I just think, how have you done it? 80 years, I have a client who's 121 years old. I thought, geez, I have a family business client who's about 40 years old. You just think, so that is also humbling for us with 13 years, for an example, because you think, doll, you know nothing.
It's like, calm down.
Just calm down, because there's just so much more to be done. And that's also humbling for me.
Very much, very much. And I think that's why, for me, platforms like these are so important, because we get to hear that from you. And I think, everybody, it's like we get to see the accolades on social media, the awards and everything. And I think just being able to experience the person becomes so beautiful. And I think it imparts a sense of humility and trust within the journey, which is so powerful, and that I really appreciate so much. So thank you for, mentioning that. I want to dial, because, when I asked you about Draft FCB and all the other companies that you worked, I just thought to myself, you speak so gracefully about them, and in a way that you were able to highlight the things that you've learned, and Nandos, and then you went to start your own thing, and the founder of Nandos. And I keep thinking to myself, I think relationships is one of the big things entrepreneurs have to master. How would you advise an entrepreneur that is on their way building, whether first year, second year, third year, 10th year, to just invest in relationships? That's coming out a lot from me when I'm hearing you speak about the founder of Nandos. I mean, you worked for them and then eventually started your own business. And I think that transition can easily break people's relationships, right? Because now it's like, why are you going to start your own thing when you could just work we could pay you more, right? But you were able to do that and still keep that relationship and still have them as a client as well. How do we build meaningful relationships?
For me, it's always been such an important part of building a career, actually. And not only just as an entrepreneur, but even just as someone that works in a business. Because when I started as an intern, my first day, I arrived and I met a number of us who were starting as interns. And I had a chuckle, because years later, I'm the CEO of one agency, and this other intern is a CEO of another really great big agency. And we meet and we talk, and we just laugh about just where we all started. So people always forget that in any space, in your current moment, the people that you're engaging with at the moment are the future builders of the country, your leaders, brands, or whatever. So never underestimate who you are meeting and who you're engaging with as a start. And I think that when you work in businesses, and that's why I even when I have onboarding sessions of new staff at DNA, this is a big conversation that we have, is around relationships, that we're starting something here. And it's actually beyond DNA, because we are meeting each other at DNA, but our futures will be different because you'll move somewhere, you become a director in another company, I become your client, I become your potential investor in the future. So there's always an understanding that you want to be building relationships, period. And yes, sometimes it takes a lot of effort, right?
Yeah.
Because you got to keep sort of keep in the know and move with people as they move. But I believe that the strength of an entrepreneur is also a strength of who they can call and who they can get support from, who they can say, geez, I'm having a bit of a challenge. And I know that I remember the one time DNA was about 5 years old and it's something I'm going through for the first time, which is someone has resigned, someone I really love. And I start crying. Oh my God. Wow. And then so I call someone who's been an entrepreneur for a long time to say, hey, this is what's happening. And they're like, oh, welcome to the world. It's your first one.
5 years later.
I know. Congratulations. And so you learn then to go, but this is a person I'm calling is a boss, someone I worked for at a different company, etc. So I guess the point is that relationships in business makes and breaks how far you can go and how big you can grow and how much impact you can create, because it's in the line of work that we're in. It's actually a lot to do with, can we work together? Can I have a relationship with you? Because when you have a collaboration with people that you really have a respect for, the work is even better generally, I've seen.
That's true. Yeah. And people buy from people that they like.
Absolutely.
Which is also a big
It's no different.
Yeah, sure. And I can imagine that also translates into internal relationships, which is your leadership style within, the company. What have you been learning as the years progress? Because I'd imagine like the problem you had at year 5 is not a problem you'd have now at year 13. But how have you been able to cultivate a good relationship with your staff members? I saw, I think it was Zoe that posted this on Instagram after it was announced that Jay had unfortunately passed, and may his soul rest in peace. And I think it's an old video of like you guys and part of the creatives in the industry, and you guys were dancing to something, sitting on benches. And it was such a heartwarming, beautiful, moment. But that looks like it was years ago. It's not like it was 3 or 4 years ago, because even from the hairstyles and the haircuts.
Yes, of course. And style.
Yes,
of course. Yeah, it was a while ago. I think it was important to align with people that believe in the same things as you, right? So there's one thing about my experience in the last 13 years at DNA has been just to be able to meet people, and I mean meet people for real, with where they are, and then also co-create a future together that we both want to see. I think that was quite important. So on the relationship part, for me, I am very interested in where my I would call them all stars, our staff members, where they work, of course, how they work, where they sit, where they live, their family, where their children go to school. It's important to us because it then allows us to tap into why this is important to us.
Oh, wow.
Not just important to delivering the goals of the business and to do the job of the job.
Yeah.
But it's also, I know why this is important to her, because, her thing is to ensure that her children are able to get the life that they deserve, but also the moment in life that she didn't get, as an example.
Sure.
And I think it's just meeting people and understanding what are the drivers of them coming to the office. What is the reason? And half the time we assume that the reason is monetary only, but it's actually monetary at a superficial level, but it's actually about what that gives them and what are the things that drive them. So I think every time when we interviewing, we'll kind of figure out, so what is your dream? What is your vibe, and from there you get to see what is it that is a motivator for this person, and then how then do you meet them as a business to ensure that we give them that platform to do that. And that's why now it gets so much more exciting for me that people that have worked for DNA can go and start their own companies and move, like Jay and Zoe and everybody, because we think if you are in a space where it's cultivated, it makes sense, it teaches you the right thing to do. When you step out, it's a moment of pride for us all to see you do well. And I'm very much of that school of thought that your team must be able to go and conquer the world and be better, because that makes me feel validated for what we've started, because it started something and it just opens up so many more doors.
Oh, when you say that, it goes back to, you said something that really touched me earlier. It's like entrepreneurs have to be like one with themselves. And I keep thinking to myself, it's so heartwarming how even that branch out is celebrated within the circle of the industry versus like, oh, why would they go and do their own thing? And even like when you mention other people that have been in DNA and have branched out to do their own, it's like you guys are still rooting for each other. And I think that's such a powerful element. What do you think makes you the founder that you are?
Wow. Sure. What a question. I think at the core of it is just trying to express what is inside me, utilizing the business as a means to do that. Because I know what it's like to have a dream and want to see it out there, right? I know what it's like to dream of a better life for myself and for my family. Yeah. So I don't think I need to be schooled on the understanding of that, but it's also an opportunity for me to be able to utilize all that I have learned and have experienced to be able to create something that becomes not only valuable but impactful to people's lives, or to people that we serve and to the communities that we are within. Yeah. So I think that's why I always think if I had more opportunities, I will use them as much as possible, because it's an opportunity to, as they say, leave things better than you found it, kind of thing. Yeah. And I think the sensitivity that I have, this my sense of people makes me an interesting leader, because I think I understand that level of empathy that's required for our people to elevate and move to the next level.
Yeah, I find that very admirable. Actually, I think it's very powerful. It's very rare in industries where people can co-create and still branch out and still celebrate each other at the same time. I think that's just. It's so powerful. I want to talk about AI tech, the big buzzwords. and now over and above that, there's America and what's happening there. I want to talk about AI and tech, and I want to find out from you. I mean, we can see it kind of shift things in different sectors and in different industries and in different businesses. It could be in creative, in whatever it is. What do you think is the best way to remain? And I think it goes back to something we also started a little bit earlier, is like being agile and being able to like twist and turn, but still keep focused to the vision, right? Even with this new buzz and all of these new trends that are coming in. How are you advising people, your team, maybe the structure around DNA to kind of be AI proof?
So for me, AI is a wonderful thing, because it's obviously helping us to dream, to explore, to create things that we never could create. Yesterday, I put a prompt to turn my poodles into real humans.
Wow.
And then it turned them into little babies. And I looked at them, I thought, wow, there's the possibilities of what they would have looked like if there were 3 humans, but they are poodles. Interesting. So AI, I think, is an amazing thing. But it's also, if we're honest, it's also something that we're used to sort of experiencing. I remember getting our first telephone at home, or I remember our first computer. Yeah. I remember, the iPhone,
the BlackBerry,
utilizing the thing. I know Nokia, etc. So we kind of, this is like a different form of technology tool that helps us to do things easily and also to do things with much more efficiency. So I think it's a wonderful thing in that way. At the same time, in my field, ideas will still need to be created by people.
Absolutely.
AI will give you some thoughts of what exists, because AI, in its structure, it's about aggregating what's already done. But what's not done yet, I think, is still in the hearts and minds of people. So us being able to look at creative work that still talks to the essence of what creative is about. It's about coming up with new, fresh ideas and solutions. So AI will never, sort of create the artwork for us, originally and we're done, right? There still needs to be human beings' brains to look at and still discern. And I laugh about this now because many times I can read a piece of content and I can say this is AI because you can see that
absolutely.
the way that the construct of the sentences and the way people are writing
the
it,
choice of words,
and because everybody has the same access to this, and of course the prompting part is important, but at the same time you can tell. That's why it's about taking that piece of content and then still it'll need someone to chisel it so that it can connect with people, with individuals. We should not ever stop thinking. Because AI is thinking for us. Because then what's going to happen to our brains? Oh my God! They'll be dull and we will not be able to expand. So it's a tool. So how are we using it at the office? Is a tool to help us be efficient. But actually, it is a first base. Because the second base for creative has to be that one up that's elevated to a point because someone has taken that and they've really finessed it in a way that only a human can.
I love that because it's artificial intelligence and there's still so much space in the market for human intelligence.
Absolutely.
And maybe when they partner, the collaboration brings
It's
magic.
Supposed to be a partnership.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be a partnership. Yeah.
I like that very much. I really do. I want to talk about the P word. It's the famous pricing. And one of the things I notice a lot, especially in the creative industry, and I say creative because I'm possibly referring to, let's say, influencers, like the graphic designer, somebody who's still independent, right?
Yes.
It's hard to price a creative idea because it comes natural to the creative. It's like you just thought of it. So how do I price this thing that I just naturally came up with? Yes, I'll conceptualize it, I'll design it, but it comes easy. It's a gift to that person. How do you do that as opposed, because I think that's more difficult than something that people can actually do or a product that people can actually develop that they'll be able to say, well, here are my costs and here's the margin. But creative ideas, creative briefs, strategic ideas, how do people price those kinds of services?
So I think creative ideas are amazing because to your point, you can have an idea that is $1 million idea that you came up with in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Or you could have an idea that you come up with that is, maybe is a $10,000 worth idea.
Yeah.
So it depends on the solutioning, on what the idea is doing or what the idea is creating. But my view on this has always been, it depends on which level of creative you are at, where in how many years have you been doing this, number one. Because I think a big part of it is, for me, initially, it was always about how much do I need to make to survive? How much do I need to cover my costs, my base costs as a professional, as a creative? And then I divide them by how much do I need to make an hour to be able to kind of create, to land to that number.
Yes.
And then I separated based on an hourly rate that then says this is for me to spend 4 hours on this job.
I see.
It's going to cost me 4,000 rand as an example. And so I've spent 5 hours. So I'm going to charge you 5,000 rand for it. And yes, at some point, once you get into a point of mastery, then you could probably spend an hour and charge 10,000 because then you've got the experience and the credibility and all of that. But I think at first you got to be able to think like an artist, like a painter. For them to create that piece of art, there are paint brushes, there's paint, there are certain costs that at bare minimum you need to be able to cover. And then, of course, if you can't cover those basic costs, then you are in trouble. But you need to be able to at least cover how much of what you need to survive in order for you to be able to kind of continue to do that. And in creative, I find that it's better that way, in my view, because then at least it can be pliable depending on the creative and what they require and what they need. Eventually, you get to industry norms. This is how much on average it costs to deliver a TV commercial.
Right.
and this is the average cost. And then you can then play with industry norms and industry benchmarks. And in our world, clients also determine a lot of, this is the maximum they can pay for strategists, this is the maximum they can pay for this based on the norms that they are. But eventually, you do get to a point where you can negotiate a price based on, your impact and also what you're bringing to the table.
Oh, I love that so much, because I think what you've actually ironed out is like a formula on how to come up with pricing. Because a lot of people struggle with this, and it's like, also, I think maybe in the startup creative world, not everybody wants to tell you their pricing, because it's just like, what if you then price lower than me, and then you're going to take my clients away from me? So there's almost like a secrecy in terms of mentioning how much we charge, and then eventually we just thumb suck until we get to a point of mastery. But what you've just shared is almost like a formula that's going to give you a base of what should be
at
your
the minimum.
Yes, at the minimum. And as you build, because then as you build, maybe you need a laptop with more space. That's a higher price you need to now charge, so you can cater for that, or foster Wi-Fi, etc. But the more you grow, the more your prices also, or your costs might also increase, especially before you get to the scaling point. So I think that's also very, very important. I want to just, I'm running a little bit out of time, but I've got so many questions for you. I'm like,
we could do part 2.
Yes. I was like, I need this to be a masterclass. There's so many things I want to unpack, because we talk about pricing, right? And, the business is moving, the business is growing, and you are acquiring clients. I want to talk about building a team, because I think that is something that I'd imagine you'd have to master, especially if you're going to be in business for 13 years. It's like getting the right person, this. And I shared this earlier last year, where my business was scaling, right? And just building a team was one of my biggest challenges. I was just like,
it is.
How do I make everyone think like me?
It's frustrating.
It's so frustrating as you grow. And I think I'm going through the journey of, okay, now we are building that. But what was the journey to mastering building a team for yourself, but also potentially maybe letting go of the idea that not everybody's a Sylvester in this company?
Yeah.
But how do you extract the right skills out of this person for the position you've now trusted them to handle in your business? Because to even just labor on this point is like, if you are trusting somebody to communicate with your client, you're not there. You don't know what that communication is like. You don't know, are they going to be kind? Are they going to be rude?
Yeah.
Are they effective? Are they going to waste my time, my resources? So what is that like for you, and how have you managed to maybe have a hold on it over the years?
So over the years, and thankfully now, I think it's so encouraging to see just how some of those small moves and little ideas actually eventually become really good big ideas in terms of managing it. For me, there are a number of things that are going to be important. One is finding, first, I think it's about finding, can I relate with these people?
Okay.
And of course, as the business grows, you find that it's not even me anymore. It's now HR who's doing that. But they now know what they need to look for in terms of the energy of the person. Do they fit our values? Do they have the right skill set? And do they have the right energy? So that's what we use to kind of first do the first base of checking this person. Then it's so important, and this is one most entrepreneurs, they make a mistake of hiring someone and then leaving them to kind of go and deliver what is required. And then they don't really necessarily have an understanding of the standard that things need to be delivered in this business. So it's about setting their standard. So for in the way that I like to work, I always ensure that there is a show and tell for sure. Now, this is how we go and present, or this is how we sell. And you need to be seeing that, and you need to be practicing that, so that next time you go, you do that. And don't leave the person alone and hope they're going to be doing that. Go with them, watch them do it, or they must do it a few times. And then you get to see, okay, we must do this better here, etc. And they'll also see you in action. That helps you a lot. And now, of course, eventually you then set up, this is the DNA way. So we've got the DNA way.
I like that.
The DNA way means you do things like this. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. And so articulating that, co-creating that with the team allows us to know this is the standard. This is then we know when the standard is falling and when the standard is actually on par. So that helps us a lot.
Yes.
And then what's been great is that now we do things like Radar, where we work with industry greats like Nurok, who then twice a year in our case, we'll go to speak to our clients and they say, is DNA giving you the experience that you expect in strategy, in creative, in whatever? So it's almost like we go on a review
like an audit
all the time. And that allows us to be ahead of what's wrong, because then that will tell you maybe your creative is strong, maybe your client service is amazing, but your strategy needs, because there's a problem on strategy. And of course, on top of that is the focus on performance and managing the one-on-ones with the team, so that on an occasional basis, you are having a conversation around what's working, what's not working. And I find that most founders don't spend enough time on that, on the people aspects, to allow time in your diary. Because I know, for example, when I have to do one now, I have to have 2 days out completely, because I've got to have an hour with each person, and that's a number of people. So, and they have to have their number of people also. It's a number. So it's the bigger it is, then it's hours that need to be spent on ensuring that we kind of chisel that into shape. But my advice is also be in the room together and show your team how things are done. They must show you how they do the things. Call your clients afterwards and say, Karabo came to present yesterday. How was she?
Oh, nice.
And then, was she cool? Then it comes to, oh, absolutely, she was amazing. And then you do get feedback to a point that I remember there was a moment where we went to present to a client a few years ago, and this client knows us really well. But on that day, I got a call to say, gee, Sly, I know you guys, but that presentation was not the one.
Oh, wow.
I know your standard, and that was not your standard.
That's trust.
And I was like, oh, really? What happened? Okay, because I didn't feel like your strategy was strong or whatever. And then you get feedback because they know the standard. You've got to keep the standard. And I think as entrepreneurs, we sometimes forget, and great entrepreneurs eventually know that in order for me to step away from the business, I need to make sure that the business has a standard in which it continues to uphold. And it doesn't get any easier necessarily, because people are people.
Yeah.
The human beings, shift and change, ups and downs quite constantly. But you have to, again, listen in. Is this the business that you wanted to create? Is this how people are? Is this, and that's always been helpful. And I know that it's also hard, and I know that most of our listeners and viewers are around the world on this podcast.
Yeah.
Will say, but sometimes it's hard to have the difficult conversations. It's hard.
Yeah, you know
what I mean?
That was going to be my follow-up question, because it's like, and I think that's what a lot of leaders suffer from. Is like, how do you have the difficult conversation? So you receive that call and they say to you, listen, that presentation was not great. Now you must go back. And so the process of addressing that, especially in the early years of business, is hard, because this is your team. You probably maybe kind of trusted them. You okayed that presentation. You thought it was great. And now the client is saying it wasn't. How do you then, what's been easier for you in terms of having those difficult conversations, but also still maintaining a relationship?
I have a mixed bag of experiences on that. There are times where it's so easy, you make a decision and then you go. But there are times where you can see that as a leader, our job is also to build people, to teach people, to elevate people, because we also had those moments where we faltered, but people didn't just sort of chuck us out, but they really helped us to build to be where we are today.
Yeah.
So I think that a leader should always be able to manage, this is the issue, but also remember that within that individual is also an opportunity for teaching, so that person is better for the benefit of your business. So I've always found that is to say, I need you to be better. And I've always say, with my team, I always say, there's a reason why you're here. And because you are amazing and we love that. In this instance, this was not delivered to the level or the standards that we all agreed upon. And we made a mistake in this area. How can we rectify it?
Sure.
I find that conversation to me is always better, because then I say, what do you suggest we do to rectify it? Then we get some thoughts, and this is what I think we must do to rectify it. And then can we go back to that client and deliver to them again and show them? And in that instance of that example, we did exactly that. So I said, I'm sorry that you felt like that, but trust me, next time, we'll come all guns blazing. And then we go back and then we deliver it, and it's a success. And then what does that do for us as a relationship? Between that person and us, we've fixed this thing together.
Okay.
How cool.
So the approach that I'm hearing is like we approach the situation and not like attack the person.
Yeah. No.
But what if it's a person problem?
If it's a person problem, you've got two options. One option is that you've got to work out a plan of what are we going to do in order for us to get to a better place.
Okay.
And of course, labor laws in South Africa require us to do that.
There's a lot of intervention now. We must go.
Unfortunately, we can't we're not in America where we can just say, take your box and go, even though that would be amazing. Sometimes.
Yeah.
But yes, you have to be able to say, let's work on this, and this is the time frame, and then we follow that process. But sometimes in the past I've had mutual separations. Let's agree to just move on, because you can see that there is no I suppose interest or ambition from the other person to try to fix this relationship. Or sometimes they don't have the skill.
Yeah,
they believe they have the skill, and that's unfortunately another challenge that we have as leaders, because we almost have to decipher what people tell us to what they actually can do, and that's hard.
That's very hard. And I think even in the creative space is so difficult, because somebody can come and they believe they are very creative. They believe they are strategic. But and maybe my question then becomes, can you categorize creativity in the sense that somebody can still come to the business and for an interview, and yes, they are creative, but maybe they're not creative for this environment?
Yes, you can. And I think that's why our intervention on how do we onboard a new All-Stars is exactly that. We have to find people that are a good partner to us and a good fit to our organization. If someone is used to working in a company of 5,000 and that they can get by without doing much in a corporate structure, and they're now going to work in a startup company, well, they're going to struggle, right? Because maybe the culture is not right. The way in which we want to work with, it won't fit them. Then that you may make some mistakes there. It's important to find the right people, and I know CEOs in general, they almost just want to hope for the best when they hire, but it's actually like the most important thing, because you can hire a great talent that comes to the organization and uplifts it and takes it to the next level, or you can hire someone that really, really ruins the organization too, because they are toxic, they're difficult, and then they ruin what you've been able to build. So protecting that is quite key. You know what I also do? If it's an important role, I will have a few people see that person outside of myself.
I see.
Which will be a mentor, an associate, someone that I say, just check this person for me and tell me what you think.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or sometimes I'm having coffee with them on Friday. Would you be in the area? Come join us.
Just have a look.
Yeah, and half the time you can tell, because sometimes as a leader you can also make a mistake because you're liking the person and what they're telling you.
Yes.
And they also flattering you, telling you about how amazing things amazing things that you've done and all of that. But you shouldn't need someone also sober to kind of say, well, do you have the skill for this job? Why did you leave your previous job? What are your worst traits? So we must know.
Sounds like relationships, like when people start dating, just get your friends to vet the person.
It helps.
A lot, eh?
I think it really it does help,
A lot. Oh my God. The last thing, see, now my team is like, ma'am, we asked Sylvester to be here until this time, and now you are. Okay, my last question, two last questions. You spoke a lot about just sitting within yourself. What does that look like for you?
For me, it looks like this. On a Friday after work, one of the things that I love doing is I love going getting home, and I sit by myself, and I just literally just go, how do I feel? Literally, so maybe a glass of something nice, and it's a moment for me. It's a ritual. Every time I finish, I go home and I just sit. And before Dumi is back from work, of course the dogs are running around outside in the garden, but actually that moment for me, that time alone is important. Also carving that time on your own is important as well, particularly if you are married, involved. Sometimes you find that there's a lot of joint parties and group things that you do together, but there has to be moments where you have the 5 hours alone or the 8 hours or time at home. And I think for me, those are the times where I really absolutely find that I find myself again if I'm lost or if I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. It's just to remember, because it's just between me and the universe, and we're just having a conversation. Setting up that time is important, but I found that for me, it's making it consistent and allowing it to become a thing that happens all the time. So it's not just once in a while when no one's not, when partner's not around, then you do it. But it's actually the moments where I know this is my time and my time to kind of think and to think about these things. It helps a lot. And funny enough, also when I'm traveling, that's also, I find that's my best time too, because I'm all, there's no Wi-Fi. And so you kind of, focusing on nothing. And that's also a great moment to do that. But outside of just travel, there's also, that focus at home. I think that's something that really, I treasure that moment so much, because it means the world to me. For me to have a moment with Sly, and for us to Kiki and to sort of, figure out
and reflect
on what's going on and have that moment. That's helpful.
Sure. What's been your recent learning in business?
My most recent learning in business, particularly in the last couple of months, there's been this idea of you want to do things right, and you also want to make sure that as you do these things right, everybody else sees it in that particular way, right? And I think as someone, particularly founders, we always want to make sure that everybody kind of understands what we are trying to do. And we take for granted that maybe some people don't understand it as quickly as what we think. So what I've realized lately is that the more we emphasize, the better the understanding in the business.
I see.
Don't take for granted the rituals, the routine. If you've got a routine, stick to the routine. Keep it like that so that the business knows that is how we work. This is our routine. Setting up those important guardrails. This meeting must happen come hell or high water. This meeting will happen whether I am in London or whether I'm in Joburg or whatever, but this meeting is important for us to be able to kind of do that. And I think I've seen that because we were doing quite a bit of training in the office, and upskilling teams and lots of sort of training interventions, and people don't always see that moment as a sacred moment for them, because there's work, there's clients, there's this.
Of course,
So people that are not focusing on learning and growing themselves. And so I think being able to understand that, repeat things as much as you need to until it is a law.
That takes a level of patience.
You have to.
It takes so much patience.
Because some people are just going to, and if you tried it in a business, you say, this is our ritual. This is what happens when there's a birthday. This is what happens when we have a meeting, a client meeting, etc. And if there isn't that level of repetition, it almost becomes so haphazard based on the individual. But that individual leaves, then what happens to the business. So you have to make it a business thing more than it is an individual thing, a process. I think I've learned that a lot more recently, because even just with clients that I'm working with, I'm seeing that with shifts that are happening in those businesses, so much gets lost because we've now forgotten to repeat those things, to keep the rituals and to drive it forward in that way. And intention is cute, but sometimes it's not enough, to ensure that things do end up happening in the way that they need to. So there needs to be some level of, we're putting out the intention to do this, but there's also has to be, we have to police it to make sure that it happens. An entrepreneur can't leave everything to chance.
That's true. And essentially, we're not judged by our intentions. We're judged by our actions.
And that's how it should be.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be for sure. And a lot of people, and as founders, people always have the right intention with us, but but they not always. It's never always the intention.
Yeah.
The betrayal that we experience as entrepreneurs, the disappointment that we get to feel, is because of those intentions that never really manifested into real action, and it's painful. As an entrepreneur. But an entrepreneur needs to have that relationship with, a little bit of bruises here and there, because we need it. You need those bruises for the future, because in the future, they'll be boxing you even more.
Sure. And I think that's a failure conversation people are very afraid of. It's like, because I think there's a certain part of your entrepreneurial journey where you feel like it's going so well, I can't fail. Like if things go wrong, I can't, And I know I said last question. One last.
That's fine. I'm good.
One last one is, how have you navigated failure? And it could be failure of like not getting the client you thought you'd get, or like the staff member that left, when you least expected it, or things are not meeting our revenue targets for this month, or we performed poorly at this client and you were not aware, or you lost your grip on something. But how do you navigate those moments of feeling like maybe you've let yourself down, or you've let the business down, or just a little fear of like, oh my God, I can't, this is wrong and I don't want it to carry on like that?
I mean, there are a couple of things that are important to me when it comes to managing failure. The one is understanding that failure that happened now is happening in a context of so many years. Number one, so it's just it's a blip of 10 years or 13 years of something.
Of course,
number one.
Yeah.
So, it's not the only thing.
It's not the end of the world.
No, it's just this one thing that happened in the mix of so many things.
Yeah.
It's almost like, something bad happens to you, but you say, oh, but I've been alive for 35 years.
It's like,
yeah, of course, sometimes it's maturity. So that helps me. So that and I'm also a highly optimistic person. So I'm always like, all right, we're gonna move on to the next thing. You know, don't stress. We're gonna come back strong. So I think that's important. 1, 2 is that you have to know failure to know success, isn't it? Like there's that conversation that you always see on Instagram. That says, "Oh, failure is your success." But I think cliche as it may be, but it's actually quite important to know that you can never just have wins. Is that possible, really? To just be successful forever without losing anything, without being hurt by anybody. Is that really realistic as an entrepreneur?
No.
I doubt it.
Absolutely not.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
So it's also knowing that this is my moment. So what I call, at the office, we say, this is our moment of learning.
Okay.
So we've lost something or things are not great, but this is our moment of celebration. Then we are celebrating. And we're going to have those moments. We prefer to have more moments of celebration than moments of
of course.
But I think an entrepreneur should know and have that relationship with things not working out. That it's actually okay when things are not working out in a particular manner, because they're not always going to work out, and that also helps me a lot. And we live in South Africa, where South Africans, we know how to, make things happen.
Yeah.
Look at us today. Look at you. We're building businesses from scratch.
Yeah.
We are putting our voices out to the world when people don't expect us to.
Yeah.
We're growing our entities with what we've got.
Yeah.
So we also have to be positive about what we can achieve going forward.
Do you think that we are competing on an international landscape as South African entrepreneurs, particularly in the creative industry?
I think in the creative industry, definitely we punch above our weight.
Okay.
Can we do better? Absolutely. Can we be more coherent as a team, as a force to be reckoned with? I think we can be. But I feel that the world, in fact, the continent, is being seen as a player in the right spaces. There are opportunities to do better. And in fact, when I was at MTV, Alex Okosi always used to say that our talent will be known by this whole entire world. And he was relentless. And you see a visionary like that. It's wonderful because we're seeing it now. We're seeing that in the creative space, whether it's fashion and music and art, and of course, advertising and all of that. We are being seen in new spaces. And that's also saying, wow, it's possible for all of us to do that. And I think we need to see more of that, and we need to unleash more of that as well.
Oh, Sylvester Chauke, thank you so much for joining me.
Such a pleasure.
I had such an awesome conversation with you.
Thank you.
It felt like we were having coffee and like the whole team wasn't here. And I always say to the people that watch that I'm very selfish with my podcast. I invite people I really want to talk to and ask questions I really want answers to. I think to learn so much. And I think from this conversation, I picked up so many nuggets that I think are just going to leave me a better entrepreneur from today.
Oh, thank you so very much. And thank you for having me. Great conversation, but also, great entrepreneur, in front of me, building something great, and sharing. It's an African thing to do this, right? Isn't it? To share stories, to share what we know, and to help other people who may be or may not be going through certain aspects that we are going through. So this is an important platform. So congrats on that.
That means a lot. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, Resonate community. I feel like I want to take a deep breath after this, because I think there's so much to soak in, and I hope that you guys really just enjoyed it and wrote down so many notes from this conversation. I think there were so many lessons that I don't want them to just pass you by, but I need you to take and implement so that you can literally make money in your business, grow, price correctly, but most importantly, thrive within your life and your business. And I think our guest today has just been a beautiful testament of that. So thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys on our next podcast episode. Goodbye.